Hello, and welcome to Tech on Deck. This is a podcast series focusing on the critical business challenges facing B2B tech firms. We do have an emphasis on enabling technology. And I'm your host, Bo DiMuccio, Distinguished Vice President of Professional Services and Research and Advisory at TSIA. And I am joined today by Joe DiPaolo, who is CEO of Acello. And we're going to have a discussion on utilization, Joe, and guess what else? AI.
Strange, right?
Yeah,
Who's
really.
talking about AI these days?
The thing about utilization is, and you and I have both been in the services business for a long time. There's a lot of chatter about the utilization going away, and in some senses it is, but mostly it's not. PS teams have to focus still on utilization quite a bit. And what they also have to focus on is how to use AI to better manage resources, better manage utilization, and all those kinds of things. So we're going to dive into this, and I just have a few questions teed up, and I imagine that we're going to go on some tangents, and that's perfectly okay. We just want to hear what your thoughts are and what your experiences are, and we're really excited to dive in. So why don't we just jump right in here? So
Yeah, that sounds great, bro. I'm looking forward to it.
we know that utilization is the number one predictor of PS profitability. So why is it that so many organizations are still struggling to improve it in a meaningful way, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you know this all too well. Some of the research that you shared from TSIA shows that a huge number of PS organizations track utilization, right? I think you quoted 97% or something along those lines. So it's obviously an important metric. What's interesting from my perspective is a really small percentage are actually doing AI from a resource scheduling perspective. In fact, I think your research shows less than 2%, which was really surprising to me. So, from my perspective, utilization is an extremely valuable metric, right? It helps PS firms figure out how to optimize their business, but it's ultimately a lagging indicator. Usually when you're relying on utilization, it's coming late in the game. It's something that you see as billing is done or engagements are, beyond a point where you can proactively adjust or adjust in a significant way. And, so it's a great measurement. It's not something that can be proactive from a control perspective. And I think that's ultimately why, firms struggle with it, or one of the challenges in terms of leveraging it the best way that's possible. As we look at the world going forward, I would say another struggle is, as firms are starting to layer AI on top of their resource planning, their utilization, their operational metrics, if they don't have the right data, it becomes hard for them to leverage the data infrastructure of their organization. It becomes hard for them to, proactively plan ahead and turn, what is a lagging indicator into something that can help them manage their business more proactively. So, that's what we're striving to do from at Acello, and from a PSA perspective, is to help these businesses create a lever for profitability, right? And that's, understanding what their utilization rates are, but really understanding that closer to real time, understanding when there's going to be impacts from an engagement to their profit and loss, and try to identify quickly and respond to that. And that's our goal. And we see that lever of, automated risk alerting through machine learning models and leveraging AI to help predict capacity and demand and those challenges. And, again, kind of going back to some of the research that I find fascinating, something I read said it was a 1% improvement in utilization can drive up to a 20% increase in profitability. And that's really massive. So the more, you can invest in these areas to help drive that kind of leverage, the bigger the benefit is, and the more you'll move to a more proactive model rather than just this lagging indicator of utilization, how it's historically been measured.
Well, you packed a lot into that response. I got to tell you, covered a lot of ground there. We agree it's it's downstream of other things, but it's an important measure of an organization's ability to balance supply and demand. If you didn't have to care about that, and all you cared about was maximizing utilization, then you just could habitually have not enough capacity and you'd have high utilization. If you didn't have to care about it on the other end, then you'd just have way more capacity than you needed, and you'd always have capacity. You'd have low utilization, but you'd have a good capacity uh, usage, right? But the truth is that in nature, in reality, people do have to care about balancing supply and demand. And I would say generally the industry had gotten pretty good at it, pretty decent at it. That's why when you look at utilization metrics, they tend to be there's a very small dispersion around an average generally. Almost all the variance on utilization is between 55 and 65% when it's based on 2080 and you're leaving out of office time in. Why? Because we generally have gotten pretty good at it. But now the world's gotten way more complex. And so it's gotten that much harder. And the premium on having excellent data and good governance around data to predictively and proactively anticipate supply demand issues. And with the supply being more varied than it ever was before, now it's gone from, I would say, algebra to calculus. So, with that in mind, one of the things that organizations have to rethink now is that the workforce doesn't just include human talent, it might include agentic talent. So, how do you think? I would be interested in hearing your point of view on how organizations should rethink resource planning when the workforce includes human talent, AI capabilities, AI agents, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, certainly the focus should not solely be on just scheduling human or scheduling people any longer, right? I think it shifts to more of a capability type of assessment and capacity planning around that. As we look at humans, I think that's still going to be. It's funny that we talk about humans and machines. It feels like we're talking about robots, but humans still are going to need to provide judgment. They're still going to need to provide key context for the firm they work in, the customers they're engaging with, the type of projects that they're working on, and build client relationships. That continues to be, what's in the middle of all this and what's going to make businesses ultimately the most successful. But businesses need to start looking at how they can leverage agents and information coming out of AI models to plan their work and figure out where can I build capacity, where can I scale, and then how do I, proactively look at the types of work that I do frequently and where can I get more leverage. I mean, it's just an evolution on what we've historically done in the PS world, and we have more options to do that now as I look at it. So it becomes these agents become a third layer, a third category, or fourth or fifth, perhaps, in terms of how businesses should start looking at these, the opportunity for resource scheduling. And I think, again, as I look at this, I think the important things that companies should really strive towards is understanding the skills that they have, whether that's human skills that have some level of expertise or what they can do in their business that they can leverage AI for. They need to start thinking about then how do I optimize allocating work across those
Mhm.
different layers, right? And then figuring out how can I leverage in a hybrid sense agents and that can do work that is repeatable or well structured, and then ultimately think about that from a resource planning perspective, and hopefully they can use that to build a more proactive framework for how they do staffing and planning for their teams.
Well, that raises a wild card question that I want to save to the end because I know we have some topics we want to get through. I want to make sure we have enough time for them. But I'm gonna hit you with something, a wild card question at the end here if we have time. But I really love everything you said. Let's try to make it. Let's make it real. Let's make it tangible. Why don't you walk me through, say, a 200-hour engagement with call it 60 agent eligible hours. What's the staffing look like? What fees, timeline?
Yeah.
Walk the listeners through kind of what that looks like.
Well, I mean, traditionally, a 200-hour engagement is 200 hours of people time, right? I would staff that in some way, perhaps a senior resource and a more junior resource. I'd put together a blended rate that covers my fee and a project plan or a timeline and something that I'm going to deliver on. I think what happens future state is we've got to look more at the type of deliverables that are being done by an organization and figure out, what is appropriate, what is optimized for an AI agent to do versus a human, and ultimately what requires less extensive kind of judgment call, and what requires what can be done in a more repetitive way. I mean, that might be creating proposals, writing status reports, doing some kind of reconciliation of budget or analysis of data, those kinds of things. I mean, that right there could equate to what's historically been done in a project for 60 hours or something in your example. So what changes there, I think, is hopefully the staffing. Right now, I've got people that are doing 140 hours of work instead of 200. I've got something that I can offload for 60 hours to an agent, and hopefully that frees up time for the most valuable resources in an organization, the senior staff, to leverage that time more valuably. I think it could theoretically play into fees that are charged, and that can happen in a couple different flavors, right? I mean, that could be I offer a lower cost because I've got a lower cost structure. But it also could be a case where I protect margin because I can deliver faster and show more value. And, that's going to depend on every company and their customer base and the engagement. I think the timeline potentially gets faster. I mean, those 60 hours that you've done through an agent in this example, could be executed more quickly, and therefore you're recognizing revenue on that more quickly. But I do think that real benefit comes back to the ability to reallocate work, the most valuable work, to the most valuable resources on the team, and leveraging AI to augment that and make that more efficient, right? Without having to scale up and add people to do that, but leveraging that. And we certainly see customers do that. I mean, we had an agency recently tell us that they were able to increase profitability by 40% was their estimation, just getting both better visibility into their data and to leveraging agents in their process. We had another customer tell us they reduced the time that they spend on resource planning by 50%. Using a tool like Excello. So super valuable, and I think ultimately that's how these projects evolve and change, and how a project goes from 200 hours of human hours to a split. And over time, it's probably going to be, in some cases, more and more hours that are handed off to agents. And we're certainly seeing some of that in the software development space for sure.
So what you're really talking about is offering your customers better visibility. And a visibility in your context is often what companies like Acello provide for users are dashboards. And the dashboard's got to be changing, one would think. So so now we're talking about splitting human and agentic utilization, right? What's a utilization dashboard that offers that kind of visibility to the end users? What's that visibility tell the PS leader, um, potentially, that they probably can't see today with their conventional tools and conventional workflows?
Yeah. I mean, just a comment, Bo. I mean, I think our goal is to offer two different things. Well, more than two, but from an AI perspective, it's the visibility with data across many different aspects of a company's, the firm's business, right? Whether that's the resources and their skill set, the type of tasks they do regularly, the financial aspect of it. But it's also offering some within the system, some agentic capabilities to deliver on tasks that they do regularly, and hopefully optimize that for them, and ultimately the outcome that their clients get. In terms of your question about dashboards, most companies will look at a dashboard current state, without without kind of historically and see a report that shows, X percent, 65%, 70% utilization, but they don't necessarily know, am I focused on the right thing? Am I doing the right work that's going to end up in a positive customer outcome? Was the mix of work I did optimized the best way possibly across my staff? So as we look to the future, we want to be able to show, um, you know, a more optimal way of working with these kinds of dashboards. So that might be, where are the scenarios where I've got senior people doing work of more junior people or an agent, right? I mean, that's a big one. Or if I've got thinner margins in certain scenarios, what are my opportunities to leverage agents on that? Where if I'm seeing leakage, are there opportunities to do something in a different way? And ultimately, it comes down to rebalancing of work and, being able to do that proactively versus 2 or 3 weeks after an invoice is done or engagement's complete, and see that in real time where I'm getting alerts and warnings that I'm kind of veering off track and I need to adjust and optimize for how to meet the needs of my customers, but also meet the needs of my business. And that's again what we're trying to do at Excello in terms of pulling all that data together and leveraging agents in our customers' workflows to allow them to optimize and balance their workload as effectively as possible. That should be what's driving the dashboards of the future
Mhm.
in Excello.
One of the things you said just sparked a question. I think about the fact that, uh, sometimes you just land up on the idea that there's nothing new under the sun because, way back in the day, the only thing we had was our internal resources, that capacity, and aligning and allocating that capacity against customer engagements. And that was the math that we were doing. And then we began to leverage partner resources or global delivery center resources as opposed to local resources, FTEs. Are you seeing some of the same kind of principles in play here with agent leverage that we've been dealing with for years with GDC resources, with partner resources, with a variety of resources? It's just, has the math just got harder, but the same basic course? It's still calculus. It's just harder calculus, or how do you think? How
Yeah, I
agent
mean,
leverage piece changing everything?
I think you're onto something. I mean, historically, a a professional service firm scaled by having senior resources that had expertise and knowledge and wisdom from a longer career, but they didn't scale their business by doing more or putting more hours in. They usually would bring on more junior staff to help them and to build resources to build and execute, and they would help optimize or review or approve before it got in front of a client. And ultimately, if it's a good way to think about the agentic model, right? Now I've got a different type of resource that I can leverage and put into my mix of hybrid workforce, whether that's partner resources or a center of excellence or a junior staff member or an agent that can do something without some of the constraints we've seen in other resource types. So certainly we are proponents of still having judgment work and some of those key types of work being owned by people and they're best suited for that. But it's a great analogy. Honestly, it's extending the old way of doing things, right?
Yep. So you guys are in a unique position, it seems to me, because you're right in the middle of the PS workflow. The core, the centerpiece of the workflow is we have work we need to do. We have people or agents or partners or global delivery center resources that need to get it done. How do we best align those resources to the customer engagement, to the customer outcome, to the customer need? So you're right there in the middle of these workflows, providing guidance and tools and dashboards and systems. So it seems to me you ought to have a unique insight into the capabilities that PS organizations need to build to stay on top of things, to stay competitive, what would you say would be kind of, what are some of the key capabilities that you think, in your experience, PS teams need to build now so that they can
Yeah.
remain competitive?
Yeah, well, and I've seen in some of the papers you've written about I think you guys call this the command center model, and the organizations that adopt that are going to outperform those that don't. And we're certainly seeing uh, agentic opportunities to improve. So, I guess in terms of what are the things that I think are important for PS organizations to kind of optimize and accelerate and get to that point. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think the data infrastructure that they have in place is really important, and tools like Excello are well suited for that. Right, we have a cross section of data from um, the new business that you're winning, what's in your sales pipeline, all the way through to your financials, and we have all the connective tissue in between. So that's the resources and their skill set, the tasks that are being done to deliver on an engagement, the cost rates, the bill rates, if that's part of the equation in the billing approach, the time it takes to get those things done. We have customer context, so that's really important. And I guess back to the bigger picture question, I think that's an important consideration for any professional service organization is they've got to have that strong foundation to build off. I think resource intelligence is important, right? That plays into the skill sets, the cost, the availability. And when you've got those things together, then you can optimize and proactively make recommendations systematically versus having to do something on a spreadsheet or pencil and paper to and spend lots and lots of hours. I referenced that customer that said they reduced that process by 50%.
Well,
And really, I think it's a small percentage of PS organizations really have this thoroughly connected CRM, PSA, HRIS kind of environment where that data is well structured and well connected. Um, I think as we look at AI and agents helping professional service firms to build outputs for customers in the future, they are going to need to figure out the which work of theirs is the most structured, what workflows are the most
mm,
structured, and identify those. And those are the things that they can really optimize. And honestly, going back to the main topic here, achieve better profitability. And just by shifting up some of their those the how efficiently they do those things, they can increase their utilization rates by a few percentage points, and it'll make a massive difference on their bottom line and their profitability. What we just talked about in the last question was important in terms of how do I in the future look to manage and plan for a hybrid workforce, and not just people, but AI agents and people working together and
well,
build the system so that I can plan work. I can do, as work is coming in, I know how, what percentage of that work can be done by agents. And then hopefully for us, I think the real time decisioning on where I've got risk, where I've got drift within an engagement is kind of um, the icing on the cake for those kind of key
yeah.
things. So that's, I guess, what I would say I'd look at from capabilities that PS firms should build upon and layer upon to get to really driving towards better utilization rates, better profitability, and how they run their business in the future, leveraging AI. So, that's certainly how we're architecting our product at Excello, and working to align to those kind of capabilities for our customers. So, and that's I think that aligns somewhat to what you all have described as PS 2.0. So hopefully we're working towards that joint vision together.
It does. We got maybe a minute left, so I think I'm going to throw you one kind of bonus question. One of the things that my conversations with PS leaders reminds me of all the time is that they are under pressure to show progress on adopting AI in their workflows, in their internal processes, in client delivery. And what I often tell them is, hey, your PSA provider really is working feverishly to build AI into their solutions. And you should be looking to them to help you show progress on using AI. Can you just share a couple of thoughts on how Excello specifically is helping its customers to really get the most out of what's available now in terms of AI?
Sure. Um, I like that bonus question. That's good. I think for us, the system initially started looking at machine learning models with the intent of understanding all of the data in the PSA system and in the platform, and with the goal of being able to learn from resourcing skill sets, demand for my resources and tasks, those types of things that I've done historically. And then we could surface risks. Beyond that, we started then working on optimizing parts of the application, so make it easier for me to track and project time or create invoices that I need to send to my customers. So, that's kind of stair stepping into more of an agentic approach for optimizing the platform. What I'm most excited about and what we're making really good progress on now is actually helping our customers by different industry verticals being able to
Yeah.
deliver outcomes and the work that agentifying work that by different industry segments that our customers can leverage to not only drive more efficiency and hopefully profitability with that, but building into the system, how can I plan, how can I resource with this hybrid environment of both people and agents to help me deliver and understand what that means from a financial impact perspective and hopefully improve
Mm.
deliverables, how the employees are working in your business, and the outcomes you get from a financial perspective. So it's an exciting, fun time
Yeah.
for that.
Well, I had a feeling you might be able to field that question, so thanks for being a good sport there and fielding that extra question. So anyway, thanks, Joe, for sharing your insights, and thanks to all of you for joining us for this episode of Tech on Deck. We will see you next time.
Thank you, Bo. I appreciate it. That was fun.